This is a Gear Network production.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy, Mr. Perez, and you're listening to the Better Live Than Dead podcast, brought to you exclusively on Gear Network. Listen in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 65 of the Better Live Than Dead podcast.
Episode 65.
I am one half of your hosting crew, Ryan Wolf, at Wolf BLTD on Twitter, and joining me on the line, as usual at this point, because the podcasting center that we use at the Wolf Den Studios is broken, Mr. Perez, also known as at MRLG Perez on a Tweetbots.
What's up, peoples? How y'all doing?
It's a good time.
Ryan, how are you doing? How are you doing tonight, Ryan?
Oh, I'm doing well. How are you?
You know what? Pretty good. I just had a delicious dinner. Now I'm driving around the city doing the podcast with you, smoking a Santiago Cigar Factory Triple Ajero. It's a good evening. I'm actually going to head back to the shop, have another cigar, and watch some of the World Series when we're done with the podcast.
Yeah, as of recording time, Game 2 is tonight on Wednesday, October 28th. I'll tell you what, I woke up this morning, thought it felt like a Friday. Now it feels like a Tuesday as I'm sitting here recording the podcast. But Game 1 was last night on Tuesday night. We'll take care of that in just a few minutes. But first I want to jump into college football because we weren't here last week. Excuse me. So we missed a couple things. But
Yep.
Most of the stuff we could just let go by the wayside, but there's something we have to talk about.
Okay.
The finish of that University of Michigan and Michigan State game was one for the ages.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was absolutely crazy.
Jim Harbaugh has turned that program around in one season, and that was a game that Michigan absolutely should have won. But when it comes down to it, just a boneheaded mistake. I mean, because if for those who don't remember or didn't see it, the puncher gets the ball, he muffs the handle of the punt, decides he's going to throw it, and throws it directly to the other team as he's being brought down. So, instead of just taking the ball and taking the loss and turn over the ball and giving your defense a shot, he tries to throw it up as a desperation heave. And like I said, throws it directly to Michigan State, who takes it back to the house, pick 6, and the game was over. And a major upset avoided because, Michigan State's pretty good. Michigan has shown to be good. So it was something that I didn't believe it when it happened. I wasn't watching the game, but Twitter certainly let me know.
It was, you didn't believe it when it happened. You should have saw the looks of everybody on the sidelines and in the audience. They didn't believe it when it happened also. It was surprising. It was shocking. It was a really stupid mistake. It's one of those plays that you see and you're just like, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? You go back to the locker room, and you probably sit there for a good amount of time, not talking, trying to process exactly what just happened.
I thought, to be completely honest, I thought it was hilarious when it happened. After it happened, after I was able to let it kind of soak in and realize what exactly had gone down, I couldn't help but just laugh. Just laugh my ass off. It was great.
Oh, yeah, no, it was definitely a funny play. But at the same token, it's funny to us in retrospect. It's not funny to Michigan, But, yeah, I laughed. I chuckled.
Now, the other thing I wanted to point out, big injury news coming across the wire this week. Quarterback of the Baylor Bears, Seth Russell, 59.5% completion, 2,104 passing yards, 29 passing touchdowns. The quarterback for the 7-0 Baylor Bears. He goes down with a broken bone in his neck. It's not considered career-threatening. He had surgery already, and it looks like he'll be back next season. But a very big blow for the Baylor Bears. Now, a lot of people don't think it's going to be a season-ending blow to their hopes in the playoffs. But certainly, when you lose one of your top players to injury, things certainly have to change. Do you believe that that Baylor can pull it off and still maintain their kind of stranglehold atop I mean, I don't know. I don't remember exactly where they are. I probably can just click through the link here and look and see where they're ranked right now. Number 2 in the country. It would help if I paid attention to college football more. Do you think they can still maintain their number 2 ranking with a different quarterback, a different leader on that squad? Sorry. I don't mean to cut you off, Lewis. I just saw this. A true freshman.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult for a true freshman to come in and run the offense in a way that they're used to. You're not going to have the timing with, like, your wide receivers. You're not going to have the timing with your running backs. But with that being said, they are coached extremely well, and their offense is ridiculously good. So if there's any team that can make it through this particular type of injury to their starting QB, it's probably Baylor. But at the same saying that, I can't imagine that they're not going to struggle. So I would say they might end up losing the game, maybe slipping in the ratings a little bit, the rankings, I'm sorry. Because I know they play this week, and then I believe next week's when they start to release the standings for the playoffs.
It's got to be sometime soon. Like I said, I've honestly not paid. Like, I used to pay a lot of attention to college football. Now I could honestly. I mean, it's not that I couldn't care less because partially I don't really care, but I mean, there's really no point to pay attention to college football until really this time of year because, especially with how the playoff system works now, that things can change and be so fluid.
Right.
It's something where. Again, it doesn't really matter until you get to November, December, when you get a better idea of, okay, we're going to see 1 versus 2 or 1 versus 3, 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, stuff like that. But right now, it is kind of is what it is.
Right, but that's the thing with college football, though, is that even with the new ranking system, one loss could greatly affect where you end up standing. Unlike in the NFL, where one loss really doesn't make a difference, give or take. But with college football, one loss can still hurt you, and if you have 2 losses, you can forget about it. I mean, you're just probably not even going to be ranked in the playoffs. That's why I love college football, is because literally, like, every game truly matters. So, I mean, Ohio State's had a stranglehold on number 1 just about all year, I believe all season. So I think they're not going anywhere. They may win the title this year.
They can't decide who they want to play at quarterback, but they're a damn good football team nonetheless.
Yeah, it's working out for them the way that they're doing it. So if it's not broken, keep going with it.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, my friend. Now I want to move over. Big news this week. Actually, it came out, I think it was yesterday. It's yesterday or today. Abby Wambach announces her retirement from professional soccer. She retires with 184 goals and 252. She has 184 goals and 252 international appearances. She's going to continue the victory tour that the U.S. women's national team is going on. I believe in December will be her last game. But one of the greatest women's soccer players, one of the greatest soccer players we'll ever see, not to mention she's from Rochester, New York, so it's a bigger deal for us. But soccer won't be the same without her, but certainly it's been amazing to watch everything that she has done for the sport.
No, I agree with you. She is, she's definitely one of those, I hate to say once-in-a-lifetime type talents, but she was extremely good. You may never see a female soccer player do what she did in terms of bringing recognition to the sport in a way that, most players haven't done in the United States. Because we all know that in the U.S., we don't really care about soccer. I like soccer, but we know that the majority of the population could give, two craps about soccer. But she really did bring recognition to the sport, and you see a lot of people playing the sport because they were inspired by her, and that's pretty awesome. I'm glad she's retiring. During the World Cup, she obviously had a diminished role, but when she got in there, you could tell that she gave spark to the team, but she just is not, obviously Abby of old. So it's good to see her go. It's good to see her go on a highlight. And I just, I hope she has a great career outside of soccer, whatever she decides to do.
I'm sure at this point, with the pull that she has, she can do anything she wants to in or out of the soccer world, and it'll be not only important, but it'll mean something, which is also excellent. Because I sometimes you see, if she wants to disappear and not do anything, she certainly that's her prerogative, man. She can do what she wants, but if she wants to make a difference, I'm sure it's not going to be very hard for her to do that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
it's always awesome when athletes use their pull for good and not evil. Speaking of evil, and speaking of soccer, Sepp Blatter, remember that guy from FIFA? He said today on Wednesday that the United States was supposed to get the 2022 World Cup, the one that ended up in Qatar. What happened apparently was the UEFA president and the then French president started lobbying voters to vote for Qatar. And as you know, that's turning out to be one of the worst decisions in many, many years, because it's like 125 degrees during the day in Qatar, so they have to play the games in like November at night, and then maybe it'll be cold, or maybe it'll be 90, but Qatar's not the type of place you want to be outside during the day. It's deathly hot. And there was long suspected that there was some money changing hands and some bad things happening, and from the sounds of it, it's certainly the trend is continuing with FIFA and how they decide that they want to influence people to.
Yeah, no.
I was going to say how they influence people to control what they want and where they want, because obviously, we know Qatar now. Qatar paid a lot of cash to a lot of people to make sure they got the World Cup, and now looking back, like I said, it's a very bad idea.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know who the individual who thought that was a good idea. I mean, obviously people from Qatar, but I mean, yeah,
money thought it was a good idea.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, you're going to have those players out there running around in plus 100-degree temperatures. They don't want to do that. That's dangerous. That is stupid.
You're going to have to talk. You're going to have to talk for a second, because I have to go plug my cell phone in.
You know what they say,
if I lose my cell phone, I don't have the podcast. So.
Oh, okay, that's not good.
Give me a
definitely
second.
want to plug that in. So yeah, I mean, it's just another case of what we knew was happening after everything came down this summer, with the bribes and how countries were being chosen because of political favor, or as we said, money being exchanged, and sending it over above the United States to an arid desert country is just not a good idea for the players. Because the last thing you want are players out on the field and then having maybe, possible heat strokes or issues with dehydration.
Just not having them in the best of situations.
Right, and they do so much running that in those type of conditions, you're really going to have issues with cramping up, but that's never fun.
I totally agree. I think that there's still a lot more to come out of this. Like there's a reason why. I don't mean to keep tripping over my words here, but there has to be a reason why Sepp Blatter said this, and we'll find out. I'm assuming sometime soon, but interesting. I'm very intrigued by what he said today. Moving over to
that's interesting for sure.
Moving over to the UFC now. John Bones Jones has officially been reinstated. This happened last week, but as mentioned, we were on hiatus last week. So I'm assuming in the next couple months we'll hear a fight announcement for John Bones Jones, most likely versus Daniel Cormier for the light heavyweight championship. I'm interested to see if they try to make it the New York State show that they have scheduled in April at Madison Square Garden. I know Cormier said he doesn't want to give John Jones the home arena advantage, but when it comes to the UFC and it comes to money, it may not matter. So we'll see how that one plays out. But John Jones is back. He will fight for the title sometime soon. We'll keep you posted as soon as we know.
You know, I think he's looking at it the wrong way. Sure, you don't want to give John Jones the quote-unquote home field advantage, but if you move the UFC, if they do it in New York State, and they're at Madison Square Garden, that's going to be one of the biggest arenas in sports. Everyone likes playing at the Garden. So he shouldn't look at it as a home field advantage. He should look at it as he has a chance to defend the title he currently holds on one of the biggest venues in sports history for the UFC.
Yeah, and we all know how that one's going to go with Cormier. I mean, John Jones has fought him before, and the results were not very kind to Daniel Cormier. So we'll see what happens. I mean, we'll keep an eye on it, like I said, and we'll keep everybody here on the BLTD podcast alert to everything that we know to the best of our knowledge. But I want to move on.
He's looking at it. But hold on, that's why he's looking at it the wrong way. Like, we know he's been beat.
No, Cormier is, like, the thing is, too, you put it in New York City, tickets are going to be ridiculous. They're going to sell out fast. There's going to be a lot of pay-per-view buys. You're going to get a lot of money out of it. And it's going to be great for him no matter what happens. And not to mention, you get to be the first main event at Madison Square Garden ever in the history of UFC, in the history of mixed martial arts, in the history of fighting. Like, come on.
Right.
That's huge.
Yeah, and knowing that you lost before, and knowing that John Jones has been out of the game for a little bit, knowing that you've lost to him, you're going to be on the biggest stage in UFC history possibly, and you can not only defend your title, but if you win, you can consider it redemption.
Oh, and it would probably push Daniel Cormier up into the greatest fighter, one of the greatest fighters of all time, that argument, because right now he's a damn good fighter, but if you're the first one to deal John Jones his first ever loss,
right?
I mean, that would be monumental. I mean, obviously we know John Jones has a loss, but that was a loss because of illegal strikes. So that, you know, in most people's eyes, John Jones is still undefeated.
Right.
So we'll see how that one turns out. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about today was that actually came across on Wednesday afternoon. We all saw that Nick Diaz had been suspended 5 years for failing another drug test for marijuana use. So they decided to go after the Nevada Athletic Commission, which rightfully so. I mean, it's ridiculous to suspend him for 5 years when he has medicinal purpose or medicinal use, I believe. But it sounds like things are going to go well for Nick Diaz, and he may be back in the UFC as early as 2016. There could be a settlement reached here in the next few days, few weeks, sometime soon. Again, the talk is preliminary, but the talk is that he could be back in the UFC soon. And not, you know, it wasn't only fans who thought it was asinine to suspend him for 5 years. It was people within the UFC, fighters, coaches, a lot of very important people, you know, kind of saying this doesn't smell right. What's going on? Is this an actual suspension, or are you trying to make a point? Are you trying to headhunt and put someone on a pedestal and say, don't be this guy, but that guy really didn't do anything wrong?
Yeah, 5 years is utterly ridiculous. I mean, that's just stupid. So hopefully that'll get overturned, because that's just dumb. And Nick Diaz is I like watching him fight.
He's a lot of fun to watch, and he's a great fighter. And I mean, the UFC is. I understand that, you know, if I'm not mistaken, he goes kind of a long time between fights, and he'll pick and choose to make sure his fights are actually worth his time. Right. But you know, the UFC is better with Nick Diaz in it for sure.
I agree.
Moving over to the National Hockey League now, the Buffalo Sabres were dealt a pretty severe blow, but not a horrible blow. It's bad enough because Evander Kane, forward, will be out 4 to 6 weeks with an MCL injury. He got checked into the boards awkwardly and went knee on knee. He got a knee to the side of his knee, and then his knee slammed into the board. It originally looked like a season-ending injury. I mean, he was laying on the ice, rolling around, holding his knee in obvious pain, and ended up, I'm assuming by seeing Instagram videos and Snapchat videos of Evander Kane's rehab so far, and watching him play again in the time frame especially, I'm assuming, and again, I'm not a doctor, but I'm assuming from what I've seen in sports before, it's probably an MCL sprain. I would assume a grade 2 MCL sprain, which is usually 4 to 6 weeks. As long as he heals, he should be fine. I mean, there's obviously with a grade 2 sprain any sprain, there is some tearing, but not bad enough. So hopefully he just heals up, comes back 100%, because the Buffalo Sabres are going to need him for sure.
Yeah, he's an exciting young player to watch. So hopefully it's nothing, beyond that. Hopefully he doesn't come back and re-aggravates it or something even worse. Because you're right, the Sabres are going to need him.
Well, the Sabres are going to more than need him. I mean, the offense is, the past couple games has kind of showed up. They've had 2 goals, 3 goals, whatever. But, at this point, it's difficult because head coach Dan Bylsma is shifting lines and shifting defensive pairings to try to spark something up, but now you're missing one of the guys, one of the cogs of the machine. So, I mean, like on Tuesday night in Philadelphia, Nick Delorier, a fourth liner, a damn good fourth liner in his own right, he was playing on the first line. And it's probably going to be a thing where over the next 4 to 6 weeks, you're going to see a lot of different pairings to see who can play with who and what chemistry sparks with what chemistry and stuff like that. Again, with the Buffalo Sabres this year, it's not about going to the playoffs. It's not about winning the Stanley Cup. It's about developing. And if you can develop some chemistry, you can make players better over this season just by switching things up here and there and kind of shifting things around and just keeping it fresh, keeping it loose. That's a good thing. That's a good thing for sure. So the hockey may not be great to watch this year, as we've all warned you. But it's going to be better. And unfortunately, it's not going to be a lot better without Evander Kane, but it'll still be pretty damn good. You've got young guys like Jack Eichel, Zemgus Girgensson, Sam Reinhart. You've got Ryan O'Reilly. I mean, it's still very exciting stuff.
I agree.
I just had to pop my phone back up. I'm sorry about that. It's very unprofessional of me to not have my phone on and ready to check out what we're going to talk about next. I want to move over to Major League Baseball now. Now, last week...
baseball.
Hey, you listened to the World Series preview. I did make sure to throw that in as a bumper just for you, Perez.
I appreciate that.
The Seattle Mariners reportedly offered their manager position to ex-Boston Red Sox catcher Jason Varitek, who declined. Now, that was originally reported by BarstoolSports.com's Jared Carrabis, a very good Red Sox follow on Twitter, and it was reconfirmed on last Sunday in the Boston Globe. So that's interesting because a lot of people think Jason Varitek is going to be a manager in Major League Baseball and a damn good one at that. But apparently right now he doesn't want to leave his post with the Boston Red Sox, which, you can't really blame him.
Right.
Speaking of managers, last week Don Mattingly and the Los Angeles Dodgers mutually agreed to part ways. Not very surprising. He had a $300 million payroll, a team filled with athletes, talented athletes, and the pitching staff and the lineup. One could argue that they put too much money into overpriced players, and not, they had the name of the talent. Like Chase Utley, a great player, had an off season. Jimmy Rollins, great player, had an off season. Yasiel Puig, great player, didn't do very well this season. So, you have a handful of guys who underperformed or just were downright bad. And it was one of those things where you'd almost had to assume Mattingly would have had to win the World Series to not lose his job. And instead of firing him or quitting, mutually part ways, whatever. But it looks like Don Mattingly is going to end up in Miami, which is a phenomenal move for them. And phenomenal move for Mattingly because it's a good young team. They just need some structure. And he could bring that structure for sure.
I agree. it's good that he's going to land someplace because he's obviously a good manager. But like you said, I mean that team just underachieved this year.
Well, the thing is like they've played damn good baseball the past couple of years, but when we say underachieved, like I said, $300 million, you have to do pretty much anything south, anything less than a World Series victory is an underachievement. Right. I understand. I know. Someone's going to tweet at me and say, for every baseball team, not winning the World Series is an underachievement. If you don't win the World Series every year, that's an underachievement. You failed yourself. It was a bad season. But I'm looking logistically like, how do they manage and how do they judge what kind of job Don Mattingly has done? You win the NL West, you win 90 games, you have a solid team going to the playoffs, but you don't win the World Series. And they haven't won the World Series with Don Mattingly. No matter how good those teams are, they haven't been able to get over the hump. And it looks like at this point, they could bring someone in next year and not change the team at all and win a World Series. It may be one of those things where you just need a new set of eyes. Like next year with Washington, for instance, they have a phenomenal amount of great young talent mixed in with some very good veterans too. So with Washington, I wasn't going to mention this, but it just popped into my head. Dusty Baker of the Reds and of the Giants, and Bud Black of the San Diego Padres, both are considered to be finalists for that job. Both will be very good hires. You bring a guy like that, and they may be able to look at the situation a little differently than a guy like Matt Williams couldn't do, which is why things got out of hand so quick. And they could come around and win 95, to 100 games next year and win the World Series. And you could say, how did Matt Williams not do this, but Dusty Baker or Bud Black could? It just all depends on how a manager manages, I guess, is the best way to put it. Everybody's different.
No, I agree, but I feel like if Don Mattingly had been able to even advance in the playoffs, he might have had a better, opportunity to keep his job. But getting to where they did and then just not doing anything, that's not good when you have a $300 billion payroll.
Yeah, you can only underachieve for so long. And again, I know. I'm gonna rephrase it just real quick. The Dodgers, in the grand scheme of things, haven't underachieved. If you look at where they rank with everyone else in baseball the past 4 or 5 years, they're a pretty damn good baseball team. But when your expectations are set so high, it's very easy to underachieve. That's all.
Yeah, you're right.
Now, moving on to some retirement news. We all expected this to happen. We mentioned it on the BLTD World Series Preview Podcast, which, again, if you haven't heard that, please check it out. Eric Simon of AmazingAvenue.com, Max Reaper of RoyalsReview.com, both great interviews. It's a great listen. I promise it's worth your time. It's about 50 minutes. Myself and Perez bookend the podcast, intro and closing. But just a great listen if you want to get more information on the World Series, about the Mets and about the Royals. And I just like to make it fun for people, which is that's the main goal, is to let people enjoy listening and hearing and learning. That's why we got into this, man. But we talked about it. I know I kind of went down a rabbit hole there for a second. Excuse me. I apologize. But
it's all good.
We mentioned this on the podcast on the World Series preview. Torrey Hunter retired. So we'll mention it again now. Torrey Hunter retired. He played 139 games last year, only batted .240, had 22 homers and 81 RBIs. He said he wanted to come home and finish where he started, which was wonderful. He was a phenomenal clubhouse presence for that young group. A lot of people said his presence there helped that team overachieve and get close to the playoffs. And what a story that would have been last year if the Twins had made the playoffs. But Hunter retires, 273 career games played. 2452 is the amount of hits he'll retire with, 353 home runs, 1,391 RBIs. He retires as a 271 career hitter. One of the better outfielders that we've seen in our time. I mean, when he was playing, he's a dominant force in the outfield. A guy you don't run on. We remember back in I believe it was the All-Star game in Milwaukee that ended up being a tie where Barry Bonds should have had a home run and Torrey Hunter ran up the wall and plucked it out, and that was one of his, bigger highlights. But
just an coolest play in the history of baseball.
Oh, absolutely. Off the field, he was not a very good guy in terms of. I believe he was a gigantic bigot, but on the field, there would be no reason why I wouldn't want him on my baseball team.
Right.
Now, with that being said, let me just peak the audio by yelling as loud as I possibly can into the microphone. We're going to talk about the World Series. Game 1 of the World Series was on Tuesday night, October 27th. I fell asleep before the game ended. I woke up this morning on Wednesday morning to find out that the Royals had beat the Mets 5-4 in extra innings. I believe it was the 14th inning on a sacrifice fly.
14th inning. Yep.
A damn good baseball game.
Inning.
Jerry's Familia had the shot to save the game, gave up a game-tying home run to I completely just went blank there for a second. I believe it was Eric Hosmer or Alex Gordon who hit the home run. I can't remember. My brain is garbage these days. I'm going to double-check just so I don't sound like an asshole because, usually when the microphone's on and I'm talking, I sound like an asshole. But anyways, it was a great game. What do you think about it, Lewis?
I watched all 5 hours and 35 minutes of it.
Okay.
I thought it was a highly entertaining game. It was exactly what I expected it to be when you have a team that pitches as well as the Mets and a team that hits as well as the Royals. The only thing that I was surprised by was when they went into the bottom of the 14th, they did 2 intentional walks that ended up loading the bases with no outs, and then they get to pop out for the score. I was surprised that they went that route. I think it would have been better just pitching at the guys to see if they were going to get on base just by themselves or hit a home run, because you have no outs and you got the bases loaded. You pretty much have almost guaranteed a win for the Royals. So I believe that was the wrong managerial decision in that particular location. But as far as the game goes, very exciting game. Lots of drama because the Royals went into the bottom of the ninth and they were losing.
Yeah. By the way, Alex Gordon was the one who hit the home run.
Yes. Okay, Alex Gordon. And
I wanted to double check.
And he hit that ball far.
Oh, absolutely, dead center field.
I knew it was going to be a good game when on the very first pitch of the game, the Kansas City Royals hit an inside the park home run.
And you know what? You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to mention that. It's the first time since the Great Depression that there was an inside the park home run inside the park home run hit in a game. Now, here's the thing I want to mention. When I talk about we bring quality to the podcast airwaves, listen to the World Series preview. Listen to what Max Reaper of RoyalsReview.com said. When I asked him about because just for a little background here, the Mets have recorded the most 95-plus mile-an-hour pitches thrown in the major leagues this season. The Royals lead the major leagues with a 300 batting average against pitches thrown 95 miles an hour or more. I said, how do the Royals continue their success against such hard pitching? Max flat out said they need to continue to be aggressive. What happens? First pitch of the game, Alcides Escobar, he hit the ball damn far. It was a misplay in the outfield, don't get me wrong, so that certainly aided the process, but they were aggressive. They remained aggressive. They stuck to their ID, to what everyone knows them to be, and that's how I love it when things work out that way. Lewis, when you ask someone who knows about a team and says, look, they have to do A, B, C, and then A, B, and C happen, and I'm like, you know what? We do a pretty good job here at the Better Alive Than Dead podcast.
I agree. And the crazy part about this is if you watch the play, he wasn't running full speed until after he got across first base. And then if you look at the stats on that play, he made it around the bases, I think in some ridiculous amount of time, like 14 seconds, and he reached a top speed of 20 miles an hour, which is crazy when you're rounding bases. And we talked about this was the first inside the park home run since the Great Depression. I believe the last time it was done was 1928. Now, here's the kicker. There's been 12 inside the park home runs in the World Series history, all before 1928. This is the first one since 1928. That's crazy.
It's absolutely crazy how stuff works out that way.
That's crazy.
I want to mention before we move on to the National Football League that back to the Dodgers really quick because I got a little heated there and I missed point out here. Gabe Kapler, the farm director of the Los Angeles Dodgers, is expected to be one of the hotter managerial candidates for the position of coach, manager of don't say coach, never say head coach. What is my problem? I need 5 minutes in timeout. I was thinking about it too. I didn't want to say the wrong name. Manager. For the managerial position, Gabe Kapler is expected to be one of the top candidates for the job. He coached in the Red Sox organization, worked a little more with the Red Sox, and then ended up working for Fox Sports 1. Then goes to Los Angeles where he takes the farm director. Something right, because you know what? Like that man has worked his way up, and he deserves everything he gets. And you know what? As a Red Sox fan, as a Gabe Kapler fan, I really hope he gets the gig because when it comes down to it, it might be nice to go out and be like the Nationals and hire a Dusty Baker or a Bud Black, but it also may be smart to go out and get a guy like a Gabe Kapler who's still pretty young and can relate to the players and knows and can just, run the locker room. He can get a read on guys and stuff like that. So that's very important in this day and age. It's not like it was back in the day where, you'd come to work, you'd play the game, you'd go home. Now it's, it seems like professional sports have engulfed the players a little. And I mean, I wasn't alive back in the 80s to know how baseball was back then, but it always kind of seemed to me like when you weren't at the stadium, when you're at the stadium, you're a professional baseball player. When you're at the stadium, whatever. But now in the day and age of social media and all that crap, it certainly seems like baseball players can never stop being baseball players, can never stop being professional athletes. Which is kind of a good teaser because I'm going to mention something later about professional athletes and social media and ask you a question about that, Lewis. But maybe having a younger guy, like I said, who can relate to the players and who can read them a little better may not be a bad idea for the Dodgers.
I agree.
And I'm going to listen back to that segment right there. I'm going to listen back to that segment right there and be shaking my head as I'm talking or as I'm listening to myself talk because I feel like it didn't make much sense there. But I got a lot of stuff out, and I just felt like that was the right thing to say.
No, I agree with you.
That's why we podcast. That's why we do it.
That's right.
Moving on now to the National Football League. Finally. How long have we been talking about football to Los Angeles, Lewis?
A long time.
A long goddamn time. Well, guess what? The San Diego Chargers have not officially announced, but it's been put out there. I can't remember who it was. It might have been the president of the team, but someone had said to a media outlet that the San Diego Superchargers will file for relocation in January to move to Los Angeles. Now, it may be a popular move. That's pretty damn serious to me. Because if they decide they want to move to Los Angeles, it may spark San Diego people to want to build a stadium in San Diego because obviously they won't, which is why they're threatening to move. But then again, if San Diego take the Raiders off the table, that might take the Rams off the table. We know that they want to have two teams, but I believe the way it's going to work out is if San Diego moves to Los Angeles and then Oakland moves to Los Angeles, you have to realign the National Football League because, and it may not be hard. You may just put Arizona in the AFC West and then put Oakland in the NFC West or put San Diego in the NFC West. But I'm still very confused on how this is all going to work out because we've seen the mock-ups from St. Louis where apparently there's a new stadium drawn up and ready to get funding to be built, but the owners of the team have no idea it even exists. And they're continuing to try to get the team. Yeah, I don't know if you heard about that. A couple weeks ago, they announced that this new stadium had gotten a name. If it gets built, the naming rights go to a specific franchise. I think it's National Rent-A-Car. It'd be like National Rent-A-Car Stadium or whatever. But then the ownership was like, we have no idea what you're talking about because that's not what we're doing. So I guess St. Louis is going to build the city of St. Louis will build and own the stadium, so there's the name to it if it gets built. But like that should tell you how much of a cluster this whole process is. Is that
well? See,
one side's doing one
doing,
thing. Well, one side's doing one thing, and like your right hand's doing this, and your left hand's doing something else. That's really what it is at this point.
They're going with the Field of Dreams process, where if you build it, they will come. And if you've never seen that movie, I would recommend seeing that movie to understand that reference. But
I've never watched that. I've never watched. Sorry to jump down this rabbit hole. I've never watched that full movie, but I do know the reference.
Okay, good.
Because even if you haven't seen the movie, it's been referenced in other movies, other popular movies. So it's hard not to know that. And if you don't know that,
you never know.
If you don't know that, your life is probably pretty sad.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I'm not saying
That's a good movie. That's a good porno line too. If you build it, they will come. I am 12. I am 12 years old. I swear.
You just that you just did sounded a lot like my man Jim Rome.
That was epic.
I love Jim Rome.
Let's not get off track any further. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. A lot of stuff we talk about here in the podcast is all developing stuff. I think once Lewis is getting microphones, and I am probably going to try to kickstart the process of building a hard drive for the podcast sometime soon. I noticed too when I talk, I was thinking about that because I usually, what I do, Lewis, I don't listen back to the podcast because when I record it, I know what we talk about, whatever. So I noticed that I have a lot of audible pauses, like where I've paid attention enough to like guys like Barack Obama, for instance, because when I was taking my public speaking class, that was one of the people we studied a lot back in 4 or 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago now. And instead of saying you just pause, kind of say or like that's kind of what with Barack Obama, that's what he does, where he'll be talking and he'll just vocal pause, like, well, we've got to do this thing, and I've kind of picked up on that apparently because I listen back to the podcast and I do it a lot, and it really pisses me off, but it's just the way I talk. But then again, I don't know what your preference is, but I would rather say like say the San Diego Chargers are looking to move to Los Angeles, and it's going to be very interesting to see how that works out. I feel like that's a lot better. Well, I feel like that sounds a lot better than saying, San Diego, they're going to move, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I just feel, you get what I'm saying? Do you get what I'm saying here?
I understand what you're saying, and truthfully, I try not to use words like or ah. I would prefer to use filler words, small filler words to fill that gap. Although they say words like and ah help stimulate certain centers of the brain to get you back on track. But when I was taking public speaking, we had a certain amount of ums and ahs allowed during a speech before they would ring a bell. So what happens with me now is I just did a very large presentation in front of a bunch of AT&T higher-ups and managers, and I heard myself say when I kind of lost track, and I was about to say again a second time, and I did this trick that I picked up when I was doing public speaking, and I tapped my leg, and I had an internal bell go off, which made me not say So I try not to use those filler words.
That's fascinating. Well, here's the thing. I don't want to sit around and look confused, and I know I keep mentioning rabbit holes because when at work, I'm falling down a deeper rabbit hole here as I talk. But at work, my trainer, we have a thing called parking lot where, we have ideas and we'll talk about them, or we'll just jump down a rabbit hole and go for it. And we've been doing that a lot because there's a lot of questions, a lot of things we're trying to figure out, a lot of common knowledge stuff that someone may not know. So he'll go into depth and discuss it. So essentially that's what we're doing right now, but with public speaking. So I apologize if you don't really care about public speaking, but you're listening to a podcast, so you must care about public speaking at some point in time. But the thing about it is I use it as kind of I mean, if I'm talking and I lose track of where I'm going, I might say but usually I kind of use it as like a running back is running in the backfield and he goes to change of direction. That's kind of how I feel like I use it. If I'm running straight and I see someone coming at me, I'm not going to run it directly into the guy and just fall flat on my face. I'm going to, juke, and that's kind of the best way to explain it. I use it as kind of a juke to keep on going with my thought process. And, now that I mentioned it, I'm becoming very self-conscious. So every time I go to say it, I just clam up. And so good on me. Good on me for being an idiot. But that was fun.
Well, one of the things you need to do now is instead of clamming up, what you need to do is come up with words that will get you to where you want to go without clamming up. When I was part of Toastmasters, they would always tell you, if you start to freeze up during, a speech or when you're talking, revisit where you were before.
Yeah.
And then go from there.
Well, I think that
was part of your plan.
That's the one thing about podcasting that really gets me. Excuse me. Usually we don't have a script. I'll have my notes on my phone and we'll go with it. But if I'm giving a speech, if I give a speech, I'm fine. But a lot of talking, it's like a normal conversation. So a lot of what we do is just as I'm talking, my brain is churning. Like right now, I'm coming up with what I'm going to say, how I'm going to say it. I look at my phone and go, okay, we're going to talk about relocation. So my brain instantly, like in my brain, it's like a computer. I click on the file that that's podcast, NFL, relocation, and I open up all the files in my brain and I just go. So sometimes you may hit a speed bump. So you throw out one of those words, those filler words, or those crutches. And if you don't use it too much, you sound fine. But if you use it too much, you don't sound very educated. Like if I said every other word, no one's going to believe what I'm saying. And I could sit here and talk a storm up and make you believe something by my conviction, by the way I speak and the way I just fill the microphone in your headphones or your car up with my voice. I can make you believe stuff, which is pretty cool. I've seen it happen before, where people it's just the way you talk. If you don't talk with any confidence, like there's some things we talk about. I'll be honest, I have minimal idea about, but I just do some research and I go, okay, I get a better idea. But if I just sit here and go, I'm not really sure about relocation, I'm not really sure what's going to happen. But then I read a couple articles and I'm like, oh, I got this. We'll make it work. And that's talking, that's podcasting, that's speaking 101. It's just
they say fake it till you make it.
Exactly. Or until you get enough confidence to feel like you know what you're doing, because a lot of it too with public speaking and with podcasting and with talking is you don't feel like you're knowledgeable enough, or you don't feel like you know what you're talking about until you talk to someone.
Right. No, I agree.
I just paused because I heard that coming. I didn't want to get drowned out. But it's fun. I know we just, like I said, we jumped down a hole there. We can call that the mid-show pre-show.
That's right.
Moving on to more National Football League talk now. The National Football League says their goal is to have a full 16-game schedule in London with or without a full-time team. That could be very interesting to see how that one works out, because obviously every team that goes and plays in London, both teams, have to come back and get a bye week. But it might work if the National Football League implements 2 bye weeks in a season, which is something that has been discussed because at this point, the National Football League wants to cut down, and the PA wants to cut down, I believe they want to cut down preseason. Take a game away, take a game or 2 away. But they're not going to be able to add extra games to the National Football League season at this point. So how do you make the National Football League more exciting? You can institute an extra bye week. So you can allow more teams to go play overseas. You can allow more teams to have their star players. Because, say for instance, Tony Romo gets hurt week 2. He's going to be out for 5 weeks, we'll say. The first week is a bye. The last week is a bye. So he only misses 3 games. 3 games. Yeah, sorry, I'm bad at math. 3 games instead of 5 games. So again, that's just that was a dumb example, but you get the idea. Plus you give players more time to rest and relax, which another thing we'll talk about in a few minutes. So I don't think it's a problem. I like the idea of a full 16-game schedule in London, continue to spread the brand over the National Football League over, but I think that moving a football team full-time to London is a horrible, horrible, horrible idea.
You know what? I agree with you. That's all I want to say about that. I think it's stupid. Because you're going to have a team geographically separated by such a long distance that
it may not matter though, because they may come over and play 3 or 4 games straight in America, where again you just bring everything over, you stay here for 3 or 4 weeks, you go back home, they play 3 or 4 games at home. It's
yeah, but that's a long trip. If they stay in America for 3 or 4 weeks, I mean that's a long road trip. You get tired for not being in your bed, for being in the hotel the entire time. You know, I think that it's just that'd be tough.
And they wouldn't play full time in England. They would have a team that, I mean, because you could just play a team at the stadium for, you know, my pants are. I just went to trying to figure out. I grabbed a string and I just have this giant ball of string in my hand. You probably would not see a team in London be home for 16 games, because that would be asinine and unfair.
Right.
So it's really, I don't know how that would work out, but maybe down the road it'll make more sense. But right now it does not make much sense.
No, it doesn't.
Now last week we got word across the board that the Ryan Grigson and not Jim Irsay, I put down the wrong name. Ryan Grigson and Chuck Pagano apparently had an argument following the Colts game last week. As we know, Pagano's on the hot seat. Chuck Pagano's on the hot seat. He had a 1-year contract extension that brought him through this season. It doesn't look like Ryan Grigson wants to bring him back next year. Ryan Grigson himself may not be back, because we see what Jim Irsay does when his team does not do good. He blows it up. So we will see how that one works out, but it continues to be apparently in the offseason, we talked about it before, but Pagano was not very happy with Grigson, because instead of going out and getting defensive help or offensive line help, Grigson drafted a wide receiver high and didn't go out in free agency and address the needs of the team. He just tried to add more stars and add more depth. Like he added Frank Gore, he added Andre Johnson, guys like that. And I believe Trent Cole was added in the offseason too. But the offensive line is still atrocious, and Andrew Luck has been hurt because of it and has been ineffective because of it. So there's a rift between those two. It'll be interesting to see. There have been some rumors. And it's nothing more than fodder, than internet chat room fodder or message board fodder. No one is in chat rooms anymore. It's 2015, idiot. Some people, and again, rumors, but connect the dots. I mean, come on now. Jim Harbaugh coached Andrew Luck at Stanford. Jim Harbaugh could have the opportunity to coach Andrew Luck in the National Football League. And I don't think it would happen just because Harbaugh wanted to go to Michigan, and he wanted to go back to his alma mater, and he wanted to win a national championship and be very successful. But what if that was a smokescreen? Like, what if he went back to Michigan, did his time there, and said, you know what, the call I got from the Colts was too good, because you know Irsay will pay someone. He's going to pay someone good a lot of money for a very long time to be the coach there. Then Jim Harbaugh. Harbaugh knows Andrew Luck very well, had a lot of success at Stanford with him, had success in the National Football League as well. So, I mean, it's a possibility until if the Colts, let me rephrase this, if the Colts fire Chuck Pagano or Chuck Pagano walks, I would think that Harbaugh is linked to the job until someone gets hired that isn't John Harbaugh.
I don't know, man. I don't know if I can see Harbaugh leaving Michigan right now. He got what he wanted. I think if he leaves, like he would be a villain in the eyes of Michigan forever.
Yeah, but again, you have to do what's best for business. And I mean, the situation in San Francisco, you can't really look at there and say he doesn't want to be in the National Football League, because nobody would want to be in the situation he was in. No matter where you are, that's a horrible situation to be in. And we're seeing it now this year. It's coming apart even worse. But, you know, like I said, I'm just a skeptical guy. You know, I believe the conspiracy theories. I have the tinfoil hats, all that stuff, and I really think that until proven otherwise, Jim Harbaugh is as much of a candidate for that job if it becomes open as anybody is.
It'll be interesting to see what happens.
I have a question because I think I've been been doing something wrong here.
As far as what?
Guess what? Breaking news.
What?
I'm an asshole again. Jim Harbaugh. Why do I keep saying John Harbaugh? Jim Harbaugh.
No, you said John like once, but then you went back to saying Jim.
It's Jim Harbaugh, everybody. I did it last in the World Series podcast where I said David Murphy instead of Daniel Murphy once, and I was so mad I wanted to drive my car off the road.
Yeah, you said John once, but you went back to saying Jim. That's the only reason why I didn't correct you.
I pride myself on being very educated when it comes to talking about sports, even if I don't know much about the sport. So I apologize. It's Jim Harbaugh. But speaking of John Harbaugh, the Ravens have been poor. Very poor this year. And it's catching up to them because, the good veterans have since retired or walked away. The offense hasn't really developed as they thought it would. The defense, again, the people they have in there haven't been very good. I believe they're 1-5 at this point. They're currently in line to get the number 1 overall draft pick. But the USC job is opening up. And there have been rumors linking John Harbaugh to that job, so that's another interesting thing. Does Harbaugh try to jump ship out of the NFL to USC and get a blank check from one of the most prestigious colleges in the history of college football? Because they haven't been great, but USC is still USC. It still holds that luster, and now that all the postseason bans and all that stuff are gone, it's if nothing else, it's more prestigious now. So that's been another rumor that's been kind of floating around. He denied all involvement, but if the Ravens go, 3-13, 2-14, 4-12, and get a high pick, and Harbaugh sees the writing on the wall, it may not be a bad idea to jump ship. So both Harbaughs again could be on the move.
I can see that happening before I see Jim jumping ship from Michigan. But if the coach offers him some type of ridiculous amount of money, you never know.
Dude, not just that. Not just the ridiculous amount of money. The opportunity to play with Andrew Luck or to coach Andrew Luck.
Right.
I mean, you need a better offensive line there. Absolutely. That's first. That's first and foremost. But the players there now, they've got a pretty good core there. It's just the weaknesses are so weak that they make the strengths worse. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, they're definitely not playing up to what we thought they were going to play like at the beginning of the season.
Like the offensive line is so bad, it makes Andrew Luck worse because he has to rush the throw. Because he has no time to protect to check out the protections, wait for guys to get open, and then again, like we said, he got hurt because of it. So
yeah, and he's not a good scrambler. He's a very, very good pocket quarterback. And
he runs like a dump truck.
Right. If you're not affording him the chance to stand there in the pocket, then he's not going to be effective. But that's what we're seeing.
Moving on now. I'm trying to pull this damn string out of my pants. There we go. Sorry. Okay. Moving on now. A stat for you to chew on for a second, Lewis. After losing Sunday to the Jacksonville Jaguars, which I don't want to talk about, it was embarrassing. Long story short, Bills' defense was really good during most of the game. And then, yes, there was a phantom pass interference call, but the Bills' defense broke. And Corey Graham looked to have pulled his hamstring in the process. And the Bills lost to the Jaguars. Now, in that process of losing, E.J. Manuel starting quarterback, he becomes the first National Football League quarterback ever in the history of football to lose in 3 different countries. He's lost in America. He's lost in the good old USA. He's lost in Canada, and he has now lost in England. Beautiful. Beautiful stuff. Maybe when they play in Mexico, we get the Bills down in Mexico when we can call E.J. Manuel up and he can lose there too.
Yeah, that's one of those fun little stats. Good job, EJ.
He probably won't amount to much in his career, as we've seen. He's struggled making the jump to the National Football League, but he'll always have that. Nobody can take it away from him.
That's a true story. And that's one of those stats you want someone to take away from you, but it's not going to happen.
Speaking of crappy quarterbacks, Ryan Mallett is now a free agent. You want to know why? I'll gladly tell you. He missed his flight to Miami. He overslept, which if you watched Hard Knocks, it was something that happened and pulled him out of the quarterback race. He overslept, slept through an alarm, said it'll never happen again. And head coach Bill O'Brien wanted to cut Ryan Mallett on Sunday. GM Rick Smith said, no, we're not doing that. And then a couple days later, they ended up cutting Ryan Mallett. Unsure where he'll end up, but dude, he lost $586,000 because of it, and his job too. So, if nothing else, if you have trouble waking up, set a bunch of alarms. Don't be a dip, SHFT. I don't want to swear there. Don't be a dumbass. Just, you've got to, and not to mention, he probably could have been the starter, or he could have played this weekend if he hadn't missed a flight because, he did end up there, but they're not going to play him. Brian Hoyer struggled. The Texans lost Arian Foster to a torn Achilles tendon. Defense was non-existent. The Miami Dolphins are on fire. So, and they're going to bring back TJ Yates, I believe. Tyler Yates, TJ Yates, whatever the hell his name is. The guy who won the playoff game when Schaub was hurt. He'll be back to be the backup quarterback, which works out for him. It's awesome. It's cool. But, Ryan Mallett, don't be a dummy.
He already was.
Speaking of dummies, you can't stop me. I'm hot on fire right now. I'm white hot, Lewis. The National Football League officially appeals Deflategate ruling. Nobody cares. The NFL is stupid. Football is dumb. I'm doing the wanking motion because that's what this all is. The National Football League trying to save face.
Yeah, I think they should just let it go by now.
They're not going to. They never will until, they've exhausted all options multiple times and whatever. Who cares? The NFL is stupid. Moving over to Buffalo now. There was some controversy with the Buffalo Bills this week. Past couple days. After a deflating loss that sends the Bills, you see what I did there? Deflating loss after we talked about Deflategate. I'm so catchy.
I did.
I'm so cool and hip. After a deflating loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars, Rex Ryan decided to give his team the entire bye week off to rest, relax, get back to 100%. A lot of people said, the Bills aren't good. They could use that time to practice and get their heads back into things. Do you have a problem with what Rex Ryan has done for the Buffalo Bills this week?
No, I don't got a problem. There are times when you look at your team and you think to yourself, they probably could use a break, and they're not living up to what people thought they were going to be. So it's probably a good idea.
You have to remember too that a lot of guys are hurt, a lot of guys are banged up, and having not practicing two or three times in a week, it does a lot.
Yeah, but it also gives your team more time to heal up, which is what they need.
Well, at this point, and we'll talk about Sammy Watkins in just a second, but guys like LaShawn McCoy, he looked good against Jacksonville, but he could probably use a week of rest. Tyrod Taylor can certainly use a week off. He should be back after the bye week. Sammy Watkins should be back after the bye week. Kyle Williams is 3 to 4 weeks from last week. When he got hurt, it was 3 to 4 weeks, so he may be back next week. It may be a little early to push it, but like I said, we saw Corey Graham potentially pull a hamstring, so it's a lot of key players are injured or ailing at this point in time, and it'll be very important for the Buffalo Bills to just give their guys a couple of days off and heal up. And at this point too, this won't doom the Buffalo Bills season. If the Buffalo Bills end up going 8-8, this wasn't why it happened. I joked around on Twitter, told one of my friends that this is just the start of the story of how the Bills made the Super Bowl. They'll say, Rex gave us that week off and recharged the batteries that revitalized our spirits, put our sights back on track, on the target, and we came back and blew the cover off the ball. Who knows? It could be. You never know. Rex Ryan is very unconventional. We know that. But maybe this saying, we want you guys to be 100%. We believe in you. Let's do this. Let's do this together as a team, not as individuals, all that stuff, the lollipop garbage. Maybe it does the trick. At this point in time, Pittsburgh's, I believe, 4-3. San Diego has fallen off the map. The Jets have come back to earth just a little. So it may still be feasible for the Buffalo Bills to get a wild card spot. But you can't play like you did against Jacksonville. I mean, they should have won that game. Absolutely, hands down, should have won that game. But, isn't the saying like ifs and nuts were candies and butts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas or whatever? I have no idea. But
I've never heard that one.
I've heard it a couple times. It's got to be a white person thing. Like most stuff that I say, like, I know I'm a white guy, but sometimes I say super white stuff. Like,
yes, you do.
I sound like a 37-year-old white man who lives in a house with a wife and kids and has a white picket fence and a golden retriever dog. That's the kind of stuff I say.
That's pretty white.
But I just think, back off. Let them do what they're going to do because, if they're going to be crappy, they're going to be crappy. If they're going to be better, maybe this helps. But speaking of backing off, when the Buffalo Bills, Sammy Watkins, again, gets himself in trouble on Instagram. I don't blame him. I do not blame him at all because if you go on Instagram, Watkins, is very active in social media, tries to, keep his fans updated, all that stuff. But a lot of people talk crap to him about being injury prone, about being hurt. Last year, his whole rookie season, he played with a fractured rib. Like, I don't want to hear how he's injury prone, how he doesn't play through injuries. This year, he had a calf injury. We know in football, calf injuries are debilitating. It's not one of those 2 or 3 week injuries. It's one of those half season, full season injuries that if you don't heal the right way and let yourself get better, you will be better until the off season. So his calf injury heals. Cool. He comes back and he rolls his ankle. Wasn't a minor sprain. He stepped and planted and went to go lunge to get the ball, and his ankle rolled. Like, if his ankle could roll anymore, he would be standing on the bottom of he would be standing on the top of his foot, and the bottom of his foot would be pointing directly up. That's how bad it was.
Right.
So Sammy Watkins put something up on the internet, and someone talked crap. And this is word for word, quote unquote, from Sammy Watkins' Instagram account before he deleted it. Quote, "To all the people that have a problem with me being injured, you guys go out there and play the sport. 100% injury rate. I'm not first or last person that's gone to be injured. Difference from me and you guys, y'all mad, and I'm not. Get a life, go to work. Stop worrying about my job because I'm good on this end forever. I'm good on this end, and forever will be losers, most of you. Just wish to be in this position. So continue working y'all little jobs for the rest of y'all lives since everyone wants a response. Here, go one. Have a blessed day."
Nice.
Do you blame him for being mad about the
No,
internet
not really.
trolls?
Not really. But at the same time, you got to realize that there's a lot of trolls out there.
I mean, he's a professional. He has to conduct himself as a professional. But at some point in time, he's giving us a glimpse into his life off the field. Like I said before, with baseball. Like, you need to know how to massage the egos. You need to know how to, as a manager and a head coach, you need to know how to massage the egos. You need to know how to take care of your players so stuff like this doesn't happen. I mean, then again, Sammy Watkins is 22 years old. He's still a kid. So he sees the stuff and he's like, I'm trying to get these people look into my life, and all they can say is how crappy of a player I am, or how I'm never healthy, or I can never stay on the field, which, yes, he's been off the field a lot. He hasn't been completely healthy. That happens. It's football. You're more likely than not to get injured in the game of football. If it was baseball, you say, I understand, you miss 50, 60 games a year because, you get hurt. But football, it's a contact sport. You're killing each other. You're trying to field every single play, 70, 80 times a week for 16 weeks. So I understand fans being a little mad, but then again, back off. Like, the thing that fans don't understand, and this is the cool part about being in the media, being behind the scenes when it comes to this stuff. These are professional athletes. Yes, it is their job to play football, to play baseball, to play hockey, whatever it may be. But they, as professional athletes, owe you nothing. Absolutely nothing. If Sammy Watkins wants to go out on the field and drop every pass that comes his way, he has the 100% right to do it. He doesn't owe you anything as a fan. I don't give a damn if you've been a fan for your entire life, or if you're just a bandwagon fan jumping on because the Bills may have excited you, or your boyfriend or girlfriend likes the Bills, so you're a Bills fan now. He owes you nothing. At the end of the day, when Sammy Watkins takes off his shoulder pads, changes his clothes, and walks off of the lot of Ralph Wilson's One Bills Drive at Ralph Wilson Stadium, he's a person just like you and I. He goes to bed every night. He wakes up every morning. He checks his phone. He has Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. Just because he's a professional athlete doesn't excuse him from being pissed off when people talk crap about him. So I love it how when we go on the internet and we see old white guys talking about how this young black athlete should shut his mouth and be happy that he's a rich professional athlete at age 22. Stuff like that really pisses me off. Because again, like I said, he owes you nothing. He's a person. Cut him some slack. Because you know what's going to be really funny when in 5 or 6 years, Sammy Watkins leaves the Bills in free agency and then comes back around, and when they say, why'd you leave the Bills? He goes, well, the fans were a pile of junk and they weren't respectful and didn't respect me as a player or a person. So screw those guys. I'm going to go somewhere else because it has happened before and it will happen again. So at some point in time, fans, you need to realize just because you're a diehard fan of a team doesn't mean you're a part of the team, doesn't mean you own the team, doesn't mean the team owes you anything. When the Bills lose, my life isn't over. When the Bills lose, I laugh and I walk away because usually it happens a lot. I've been a Bills fan for 15 years now. They've lost a lot more than they've won. But do I sit here every offseason going, you know what, the Bills owe it to me to go out and get a good quarterback or go out and get a good coach? No. Be logical. Pull your head out of your ass. Players owe you nothing. The team owes you nothing. They're people. Cut them some slack. Back the hell off. If you don't like what Sammy Watkins posts on Instagram, unfollow him. It's not that hard. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This stuff really pisses me off.
I see this.
I don't, it just gets under my skin, man. Like, in the day and age, you know it just as well as I do. People get pissed because their favorite player doesn't give them access. But then when they give them access, you go on the comments and, Tony Romo's a bitch. Tony Romo ain't clutch. Tony Romo sucks balls. New York Giants for life. Stuff like that. Like, really? Are you 5 years old? Is this your first time ever using the internet?
Yep.
This is why I just get very, very angry because and that's one thing that cracks me up too. That one thing that makes me really mad. I've had the opportunity and the pleasure of going into a hockey locker room a lot of times, 50, 60, 70 times at this point in my life, and they get to interview players. And there's nothing more humbling to me than walking into a locker room, seeing a professional hockey player who you as a fan, you idolize, you look up to, that guy's awesome, whatever it may be. And you go into a locker room and they treat you, unless you're a terrible writer who blasts them and burns them all the time, usually the players treat you like human beings. They treat you like they're one of them. So the least that the fans could do for getting this access and for the players treating them like people is to respect them and be nice. I understand you, the heat of the moment, you get pissed off about stuff. But again, if your favorite player gets hurt or your favorite player does bad or your favorite team does bad, your life isn't over, man. Like, you're going to wake up tomorrow, hopefully. Like, they play again next week, or with the Sabres, they play again in a couple nights, or with baseball, they play again the next night. It's not like it's the end of the world. Like, if you feel that, I wish, I would love to take a look into these people's lives. And, they care so much about, like, a 40-year-old man cares so much about how a 22-year-old is on Instagram. Does he care about his own wife and kids that much? Or is he sitting there, I wonder what Sammy Watkins is going to do on Instagram today so I can talk crap to him and tell him how he's injury-prone and how he sucks and how he's a bitch and he's a baby and, he's immature, egotistical, whatever it may be. Like, really? Like, if you hate something that much, you probably need some help.
No doubt. I agree.
With that being said, shall we move over to the picks for the week? Shall we do that?
Let's move over to the picks, bro.
Okay, you can see the smoke coming out of my ears over the phone.
I could. Well, before we get to the picks.
It's not very often I get that mad, but you know what? When I get mad, it's for a reason. It's not just, oh, hey, man, the Buffalo Sabres got screwed out of a game because of a bad call. Like, no, there's some substance to it.
I agree.
Sorry.
Before we move over to the picks, let's just update people on Game 2 of the World Series.
Thank you.
Bottom of the third inning, The score is 0-0. Both pitchers are doing what we expected both pitchers to do. The Mets have one hit on the night, and the Kansas City Royals.
You'll get there.
I went with the Chiefs. I went with the Astros. What am I talking about? The Kansas City Royals, who are currently up the bat, have 0 hits on the night.
Hey, also, real quick, Jake DeGrom said that after this World Series, he will cut all of his hair off, and it's pretty. He's got a pretty good salad going on there.
Yes, he does.
So that'll be sad, because if for some reason, professional like baseball players with long hair, it just cracks me up.
And he looks funny with his hair like flowing from underneath his cap. Like it's hilarious to me.
Hey, it's his gimmick. It's like when Johnny Damon was an idiot with the Red Sox. He had the long flowing mane and everybody loved it. That's what he was revered for. People. You saw the long hair, you knew it was Johnny Damon.
Exactly.
Last week, Lewis, you were almost untouchable. You went 12-2. I went 10-4. John 8-6. Moving into this week. Now, last week, I'll just tell you, Lewis, you missed Pittsburgh and San Diego, which San Diego laid an egg, and Pittsburgh, no one expected that to happen. I mean, come on now.
Right.
But
exactly.
Moving over to this week, Lewis, you lead. You're back in the lead by one game. 65-40 overall. Myself, I am 64-41, and John is in third place, 61-44. Now this week, we have a few less games to talk about. Sorry, I had to grab my phone because I know John, the first game I'm going to talk about, John gave me an explanation as to why he chose who he chose. So let me grab that.
Did you say I went 12-2?
You went 12-2 last week. Very, very well done.
I just wanted to say that again.
You want to bask in the glory a little, the shine of it. The first game we all do not agree upon, Lewis. You and I have the Kansas City Astro Royal Chiefs beating the Detroit Lions, and John has Detroit winning. So this is John's verbatim explanation quote: "While I picked Detroit over Kansas City, feel free to include that I jokingly said that America wins that game since it is not on our soil." Very, very good point. Very good point.
That's a good point.
So either way, America wins because it's not happening in America. Myself and Lewis, we have Kansas City, or Lewis and I have Kansas City. John has Detroit. Moving on now to San Diego, Baltimore. Now, John and Lewis, you both picked San Diego. I picked Baltimore. Now, hear me out on this one. Baltimore has played close every single game. They've had the opportunity to win every single game, have not been able to close the door at the end of things. You look at San Diego. San Diego's 2-5. Baltimore's 1-6. Both on 3-game losing streaks. Both have been playing some pretty bad football. Both have very good quarterbacks. Now, part of the reason I selected Baltimore was because of the close game factor. They play close. They may be able to get one here or one there to push them over the edge to win the game. But I'm also of the thought process of San Diego traveling cross country to Baltimore. It gives Baltimore the advantage. I do think that will play a big enough factor in the game to allow Baltimore to take the game against San Diego, and I hope they do because I'm trying not to fall too far back in the standings here. Because the third game we don't agree on. Lewis, you and I have Oakland, and John has the New York Jets. Now the New York Jets are a good football team. Don't get me wrong, but again, it's another scenario where the Jets fly from New York and go to Oakland. Oakland has proven to be a talented football team this year with Carr at quarterback, Amari Cooper at wide receiver. Their defense is improved. They've got I think it's Latavius Murray at running back. They've got a lot of talent there, and they're quickly starting to build up and become a better football team. I think that it's Oakland. I just have a feeling Oakland's going to take this game. I mean, I don't really have much of a reason besides that. I just think Oakland's going to take it.
Well, Oakland obviously exploded last week, which no one was expecting. And I believe they may be able to carry some of that over to this game. And this is the Jets' first really long travel away game, but I think that's going to factor in.
That's fair. I mean, that's there's not much more than, usually the factor of traveling west to east or east-west plays huge, which is why teams don't like to do it, but that happens. So also, just real quick to run down the list, we all have New England over Miami, which will be a very good game. Miami's defense have much improved with the new head coach, Dan Campbell, new interim head coach, but I feel like this is too hard of a test for Miami. Miami's beaten bad teams. Now they have to play a good team, undefeated New England Patriots team that even up against the wall has still been able to win. We all have New England. We have Atlanta over Tampa Bay. That may be kind of a trap game, but I still think Atlanta at home can pull it out. They didn't play very well last week, but they did enough to win against Tennessee. They won 10-7. And Jameis Winston had a great game last week too, but I digress. We all think Atlanta's going to win. We have Minnesota over Chicago, Arizona over Cleveland, St. Louis over San Francisco, the Giants over the Saints, Cincinnati over Pittsburgh, Houston over Tennessee.
I almost went with the Saints.
I thought about it, but I just feel like the Saints are bad enough and the Giants are good enough.
Well, the Saints they've kind of been revitalized the last couple of weeks. They're going for their first 3-game win streak of the season. I feel like, I think this game could be a toss-up, but I feel like the Giants right now are just more of a complete team, and they're going to pull it out. I think it's going to be a close game, though.
I also believe, it'll be a very good game to watch. Like I said, I think the Giants are just going to take that one fair and square. We all have Cincinnati continuing to stay undefeated against Pittsburgh. Ben Roethlisberger should be back this week, but I still think the Bengals are way too good.
Yeah.
We all have Houston over Tennessee, which is interesting because Houston's kind of in disarray. But with this one, it's simple. I feel if Marcus Mariota's not back at quarterback, Tennessee's going to lose, and I don't think he's playing this week, so I'm going to go Houston. Plus,
that's why I'm doing it.
Yeah, after being embarrassed last week, you're going to think Houston's going to come strong with, more blitzing or something to show that last week was a fluke. So I've got Houston, you've got Houston, Lewis, and John has Houston as well. We all have the Seattle Seahawks, the underwhelming Seattle Seahawks beating the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas. I mean, this was a game that was circled on everyone's calendar at the start of the season, but with Seattle's ineffectiveness this season, coupled with Dez Bryant and Tony Romo being hurt, the lusters are gone a little, but it's still going to be Cowboys and Seahawks, so that'll be a good game. But Matt Castle's at quarterback. He's better than Brandon Weeden, but he's still not anywhere near Tony Romo. He may be able to manage the game. I mean, if Dez Bryant's back this week, he may do a little better. But last week he did not do very well. I think he had 3 interceptions. One was returned for a touchdown.
Yes.
I mean, the Cowboys may be able to sneak in and get a wild card berth if they can, if other teams struggle. But right now, I mean, like, with how well teams have played in the NFC, it's looking like, it's going to be very difficult for a team like Dallas, who's struggled so early and so often to make it back unless they can win the division.
Yeah, especially, I was thinking. Here's the funny thing: like, there's so many Dallas Cowboy haters out there, and I see all these memes and stuff online and on Facebook, and people are like, "Oh yeah, why don't you say one more time how you didn't have your top 2 players?" Okay, we didn't have our top 2 players. The Dallas Cowboys are one of those teams that really shows that if you have a quarterback that's extremely good and a top-tier wide receiver, how they can bring a team together and make that team gel. And then if you throw a wrench in it, they're going to struggle, and that's what's been happening. I think if Dez was healthy and if Tony was healthy, and it would be a completely different team that you'd be seeing.
Absolutely, and I think with the Cowboys too is they've learned really quick. Is you figure they would learn their lesson with Tony Romo. Like he's not impossible. He's not impervious to injury. I guess I don't even know if that's the right word. It sounds like the right word, but whatever. He's not uninjurable, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But
impervious was good. Yeah, he was. Yeah, okay.
Okay, he's impervious to injury. Like I said, I thought it sounded good, but they don't really put a good backup plan into place because we know Brandon Whedon if he gets thrown in the game, he's fine. But when a team can game plan for him, he's not good. And with Matt Castle,
right.
he was serviceable, never great, serviceable. He's a glorified game manager. And with that offense, you have to be a better game manager because if the running game gets shut down, you're screwed. You also really can't make mistakes, and he's made mistakes. And, that's the one thing that really pisses me off about the Buffalo media. They're talking about how Matt Castle would be better than E.J. Manuel. There's a reason why the Buffalo Bills were comfortable getting rid of Matt Castle, or at least that Doug Whaley, the GM, was comfortable getting rid of Matt Castle because E.J. Manuel, he felt, gave them more upside offensively. Which, again, if you have an offense that's Tyrod Taylor and you have to go to Matt Castle, you have to change the entire offense because, that's right, Matt Castle doesn't run with the ball. Now, granted, right. I understand E.J. Manuel doesn't run with the ball because he's too busy getting sacked or getting clobbered or destroyed, whatever it may be. But it's the thought that counts. So, that's a different talk for a different day. But if you didn't know, Buffalo media is full of crap and they're a bunch of idiots with their heads shoved up their asses. I'm sure you may have known that by now. But the Dallas Cowboys, maybe they'll learn their lesson at some point in time. I mean, with John Kitna, it wasn't too bad, or with Kyle Orton, it wasn't too bad. But the drop-off from quarterback to backup quarterback can't be very far for them. And same goes with wide receivers. Like, you need to get a little more depth. So if Dez Bryant goes down or someone else may go down, you have a guy that can step up and be as good or better. And, I don't know if they've done that for themselves, but clearly they bet on their good players being healthy and being effective when healthy. But, like I said, I'm just going to see if I can get this on my phone really quick so we can discuss it very fast before we wrap this bad boy up. The NFC is jumbled at this point. Seriously, like, you look at the AFC, you have, and again, we're only, not even halfway through the season, but you have the Jets at 4-2 in the wild card, Pittsburgh's 4-3, Oakland, Miami are 3-3, Buffalo's 3-4, and then Kansas City's 5-5. So that maybe you cut off under Buffalo. So you have Oakland, Miami. You have the Jets, Pittsburgh, Oakland, Miami, and Buffalo right now fighting for a wild card spot. You move over to the NFC. You have Atlanta at 6-1, and you have Minnesota at 4-2. And then you have St. Louis 3-3, and then you have Washington, Seattle, Philadelphia, New Orleans at 3-4, Dallas at 2-4. So, with the way that the NFC South is playing out, you're probably going to have either Carolina or Atlanta be a wild card team. So then you'll have, let me do the math here really quick, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, including Dallas, 7 teams for one wild card spot.
That's going to be tough. And
if Minnesota continues to play well, like everyone expects them to, the door may be shut soon. Like if Minnesota goes out and wins 3 straight games and they go to 7-2, or they go to 6-3, or whatever it may be, it's going to be very tough, very quick.
I agree.
But the NFC East is still very winnable. I mean, the Giants are 4-3, Washington and Philly are 3-4, Dallas is 2-4. So you just have to win the games you're supposed to win. When Romo comes back, just hope to God he can go on a run. Same with Dez Bryant. Hopefully he can go on a run. Hopefully that defense can be good enough, and the Cowboys can go on a stretch. Because if not, it's going to be a disappointing season.
That's a true story.
Sorry, I had plugged my phone back in over here. But that's the podcast for this week. A great talk, I think. We went well over an hour, about an hour and a half at this point. I want to say thank you to each and every single one of you for tuning in this week. I know we went back to the straight through talking podcast method with the World Series preview. I did some production, because I had multiple different interviews and we recorded the start and the end at the same time, all that stuff. So I had to do a lot of production. We're here, not much to do. It's a lot easier just to go straight through. Plus we get to talk and we don't have to break everything up and rush things, which is nice. But thank you to each and every single one of you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to the World Series preview, the BLTD episode 64.5 World Series preview with Eric Simon of Amazing Avenue and Max Reaper of Royals Review. Thanks again to Eric and Max for joining me. if you haven't checked it out yet, listen to it. It's not not time sensitive now because the World Series has already started, so you almost can go back and listen and hear what they had to say about the teams and kind of match it up and see if they were right or not. Because remember, these are the professionals. They write about the Mets and the Royals every single day of every single year, whether there's baseball being played or not. So they know these guys are the experts for sure. I don't mess around when it comes to interviewing people about sports in the podcast. But I do also want to say thank you to you, Lewis, for joining me on the phone this evening.
Yep, thank you.
I have to go get some tea here soon, and no problem. I'm glad to always talk sports with you. I'm glad we could work it out because last week was crazy busy. This week is crazy busy. Next 3 weeks are probably going to be really nuts because I'm working 9 to 5:30, and then after the next 5 weeks, my schedule changes, so I'll be working most likely 2:30 to 11. So I'll have mornings open or late nights open. So it's going to be, again, it's going to be very trying. We may take another break here shortly just to try to get things figured out, but got to get my life back on track. I mean, the job is not bad. It's a lot of learning, a lot of figuring things out, but I'm ready for the challenge. I know, like today, for instance, we were asked how to do something without using a computer, and I had no idea, but, once I saw it on the computer, I'm like, oh, that's simple stuff. So
right.
I feel at this point I just have to get on the floor and start taking some calls and seeing how to work things out that way, because the best way to learn is trial and error, and I feel like I'm pretty well educated at this point. Just have to learn a few more things, and we'll be good to go.
Cool.
We'll see what happens, man. I'm not worried about it. I'm getting paid $13 an hour to learn how to work on computers. I mean, that's not a bad gig at all.
No doubt. A lot better than your last gig.
Oh, absolutely. I've done more work in the past week than I did at that place for like 8 months.
Nice.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But as we always say here on the Better Live Than Dead podcast, we're better live than dead.
You're not.
We'll talk to you again next week. We may have a World Series champion by then. If we do, we'll talk about it. If we don't, we're still going to talk about it. It's a crazy thing, isn't it?
True story.
We'll talk more about the National Football League and anything else that pops up. Real quick, I did want to mention PGA Tour.com or PGA.com took Tiger Woods off as their main picture and put him down to a smaller square. That was a big news story today. Whatever. Clearly, they're starting the transition. Tiger's like 331st in the world right now. So they're starting their transition to move away from Tiger Woods. So that'll be interesting to keep an eye on as well. But
that's right.
My voice hurts really bad, so I'm gonna bid you adieu. Thank you again for tuning in. You follow us on Facebook.
Go get some tea, bro.
Facebook.com/BLTD Podcast, on Twitter at BLTD Podcast. Check out BLTDsports.com. The Twitter is at BLTD Sports, not BLTD Podcast. Let me try that again. Facebook.com/BLTD Podcast. On Twitter at BLTD Sports, BLTDsports.com. I'm Wolf BLTD on Twitter. Lewis is at MRLG Perez. Follow everything. You can listen to all of our life discussions and all that stuff. And if you want to tell us we suck, you can come on Twitter and tell us we suck. I'll gladly retweet you if you tell me I suck. It's just how things work. But with that being said, Lewis will do as well. That being said, thank you much for tuning in. We will talk to you next week.
Later.
Bye.